this week I wanted to talk to you guys about how you can actually get into reading. So not necessarily like get back into reading or like out of a reading slump or anything like that, but how you can actually get into reading if it's something that you want to do but you feel like you just haven't been able to for one reason or another. This is going to explain exactly how I got into reading and how you can too. Honestly, I felt like the way it almost felt like a giant accident. It was so easy for me to get into reading, and I think that it's very doable for anyone who wants to read more, but in a fun way. I don't think this has to be something that you have to like try to force yourself into making a habit. I think it's something that can be really enjoyable if you want it to be. I'm going to share exactly what happened to me and how I think you can basically duplicate that and have it in your own life, so that if you are wanting to become more of a reader, you can become a reader and you can get into reading and actually enjoy it. Peach will be joining us. If you don't know who this is by now, this is Peach. We have 4 cats in the house. You'll probably only see Peach. I think the rest are outside right now. But anyway, basically what happened was, if you're new here, I just moved to Portugal like a few months ago with my family. We are really enjoying it. It's amazing. That's not really the point of the story. I just think it's interesting information in regards to the story itself. We basically came to Portugal in 2022 and we were here for I think a few weeks, maybe a month, and we explored blah blah blah. What does this have to do with reading? When we first came here, that was the first time I actually picked up a book. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna read a book on the flight instead of just like watching movies and whatnot. I just want something different. I don't want to be on a screen the whole time because it's a decently long flight. The book that I happened to pick up was one that I was seeing everywhere all the time. It's very popular, so you'll probably know it. It was the ACOTAR series. So it was the A Court of Thorns and Roses book by Sarah J Maas. I thought, why not? Perfect opportunity. Everyone's hyping the shit out of this book. And so what was one book turned into like 4 and a novella. I really enjoyed it. Yes, I'm aware that there are obviously, I don't know how to phrase this, but anyway, I don't think it necessarily, I think what you're going to notice in this video is that I don't think it matters how good a book is or not. I think what matters is if you're enjoying reading or not. And this book had me enjoying reading more than I ever knew I could. And it was just so fun. So I got the first book for the plane ride, brought it over. I would read it when we weren't like out and about, like kind of just before we would go to bed, also replacing my screen time, which was quite nice. And then I ended up realizing like, oh, I want to read the next book. So I was trying my hardest. I don't think I was able to get the second book while we were here. I don't remember what happened with that. Anyway, what happened was I knew I wanted to finish the series. So good. I enjoyed the entire series. It just got better and better and better in my opinion. And then I was like, I finished the series and I was like, oh, okay, what now? And I just kind of kept exploring books, and then I eventually picked up Throne of Glass by her as well, and that is what solidified reading for me. I was like, okay, this is not just a small interest. It's not just because of fairy smut. It's something that I can tell I really like doing. It's something I love spending time on. This is a true hobby for me. It's not just something I want to do to say that I read. It's something that I truly enjoy doing. And I just think it's so funny because it's been not quite 2 years, 1.5 years. We actually live in Portugal now, and I make these videos for you guys talking about books that I love and why I think reading could be or is something that can be really fun for you too. So yeah, basically I started my reading journey in Portugal and now we are here in Portugal. So that's what happened to me. Honestly, it did almost feel like an accident. I couldn't believe how immersed I became in this book world. I just had no idea what I was missing apparently. So because that happened to me, honestly, I just wanted to share the story so you can kind of get an idea of how I got into reading, because I'm someone who just didn't like reading. I never enjoyed it. I honestly could not even understand why someone liked reading, and if I was reading, I would only read for like personal growth, so like nonfiction, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but honestly I was reading books I think that even made me not like reading more, because it solidified that this is something that requires like work. It's not actually for enjoyment or like as a hobby. It's more so just to like grow as I am, grow as a person. I do think nonfiction is still great for that. I think there are plenty of books that are great for that. However, that to me is more of like a habit forming type of reading. It's not necessarily one that you like a nonfiction. For the most part, when I think of nonfiction, I do think of personal growth. Obviously, there's other aspects to nonfiction besides that. What I'm getting at is that the kind of books I was reading almost made me not like reading, in the sense that I always saw it as something that was helping me grow, but not necessarily something that I did for fun. So I do think that was kind of interesting. Regardless, prior to that, I'm just someone that never really understood how someone could actually enjoy reading that much. I was never the person in school who would pick up a book or got really into the books that we read in class. Like when people really enjoyed, I think when I was in school, we were reading like The Hunger Games and The Kite Runner. And even when I went to university, I remember reading A Room of One's Own. And I look back now and I think, wow, I probably would really like those books now, but back then I just wanted to get it over with. I did not like that we had to do that. I wasn't bad at like English class in any way. I just, yeah, books were just not my thing. And honestly, if you were to tell me a few years ago that my reading goals would be like 60 books a year, I just wouldn't believe you. The point with that too is that a reading goal like that is not necessary. Reading goals aren't necessary. I think the clarification I want to make with this video is that reading is meant to be like fun or enjoyable for you, whatever that looks like for you. And I think that's the part that gets maybe like overlooked or missed, is doesn't matter how many books you read, how you read the books, when you read the books, what kind of books you read, as long as you're enjoying it, as long as you're getting fulfillment from doing it, I think that's what really, really matters. And that's exactly what happened to me with the ACOTAR series, and then again with Throne of Glass. So I think that's why I'm literally so in love with reading now, is because I get so much fulfillment and joy from it. It's not just an escape for me, it's something that has taught me how to do things very differently in my life. And so I'm really, really grateful for that. My point with this being is that is how you become a reader. That is how you get into reading, is by reading books that actually bring you joy and fulfillment. And I know that first step can be hard. Like, how do I find books that do that? So I am going to recommend, if you are someone who wants like romance, fantasy, fast-paced, interesting, unlike a world unlike you've ever really known, because you were like me and you hadn't really read anything up until that point that had any interest to you, I would recommend reading ACOTAR first. You do not have to read Throne of Glass first. That was her first series. I would read ACOTAR and then Throne of Glass. That's just me. I think other books that can really get you into reading would be contemporary romance and romance books, and fantasy and romantasy genres also. I know for some people they really enjoy like thriller books and suspense. I'm not really into that. But really take into account like what you enjoy day to day, and think about what you would want to read about that you're maybe taking in a different format, and see if you can find like a popular recommendation in that same category. So for example, if you do like fantasy or sci-fi in like movies or TV shows, or maybe even like there's certain kinds of YouTube videos that you watch that you really like, see if you can find that like genre or niche in a book. I will say, like I said, I do recommend just starting with ACOTAR and then Throne of Glass. I think those books are incredibly fun and magical, and they really bring to life your imagination. And I think that's what got me hooked. I couldn't believe how much my imagination changed my beliefs. It was just so wild, almost unbelievable to me that that was what happened. Regardless, even though I'm recommending those, I know that might not be for everyone. I know not everyone might not want to read fairy smut. That's not what the books are entirely about, in my opinion, at all, especially Throne of Glass. But if you are looking for something that will completely change your life, I do think those books will do that. They definitely did that for me. However, I picked that book because it was constantly being thrown in my face on social media, and I was just like, you know what? I'm just gonna get the book. I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna see what the hype is about because I'm just curious and I have to know. So maybe there's a book out there for you that you've been seeing like a lot of. I think just using your intuition and following like signs, whatever you want to call it, of like, yeah, you've seen something a lot. It might be of interest to you. Why not try it out? I think a really good way to do this too is if you're worried about like costs, is just go to like a used bookstore or thrift store and go play around with it. Just have fun with it and enjoy the aspects of shopping for a book and being in that environment of books. Just enjoy the entire experience if you can. I think that it's a pretty fun experience, especially if you want to go to a local bookstore or anything like that. You can grab a coffee, just really enjoy it. Just make it really fun for yourself, like almost like a self-date, if you will. You will find that falling in love with reading is easy when you start picking up books that actually interest you. That was the biggest thing for me, and I think it's why, I mean, I can already tell within these past couple of years that my taste has changed. Well, it hasn't changed per se, but it's grown. Like I read more than I ever have before. I went from reading nothing to last year, I think I read 57 books. So honestly, this is super simple. Basically, all you're going to do is, if you just want to take my recommendation, start with ACOTAR. I can link it in the description. If you've noticed books already popping up in your feed that might be, like your social media feeds, that might be of interest to you, start with one of them. Just have fun with it, play around with it. It's honestly a really nice way to replace screen time. It's a really nice way to expand your imagination and just start seeing your life and your world differently. And I think that we forget how fun it is to believe in the make-believe. So I do really enjoy that about books too. I think that's what really captured me with the books that I started with, was the magic. And I think if you are someone that is missing the magic or like love in your life, these are really, really good books to start with, and they're just fun and fast-paced. I mentioned it before, but reading is reading, no matter what you're reading, how you're reading, when you're reading. I think it all is just reading, and if you're enjoying it, that's what matters, and that's basically the whole point of this video. Just start with a book and see if you're enjoying it. If you're not, don't finish it. Find something else to read. If you are noticing that you're picking up a book and you're just bored, that's like, sometimes, yes, books are a little bit slow to get into. You can try to finish it, but if you feel like you're forcing yourself through it, don't do that. That's not worth it. You can get into reading if this is something you're considering or wanting to do without it having to be like forceful, and without having to read books that are just not that fun to read and make you want to constantly check your phone. So yeah, I think if you're looking to read and you're looking to get into reading it, you should. And I think it can be really fun. Make it pressure-free, stress-free, and just a really fun time, and see where it takes you. So if you're thinking about getting into reading, let me know what you are thinking of reading. And if you're like me and you're not getting back into reading, but this is like your first time just getting into reading in general, let me know if that's you too. I would love to hear from people who are kind of like lurking and trying to decide if this is something they want to do. But yeah, I think this really can be for everyone. You just have to find that book that is a good fit for you. And once you do that, it's so easy. Everything just takes off. I will say I got a little bit lucky with reading ACOTAR and just being fully sucked into like loving books. However, I will say I just kind of finally trusted my intuition on that one. I just let myself get the book that I was seeing everywhere, saw what the hype was about, and just let myself enjoy something. And I let myself kind of switch things up in my life and see where it took me, and I think you can too. So yeah, like I said, if you are looking to get into reading and you are maybe wanting some other recommendations, just let me know in the comments and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. I hope you guys have a beautiful week, and I'll talk to you next week. So if you're thinking about getting reading